Absolute Bitcoin massacre. Guys, pay attention. Now listen up. We've now slipped below $80,000. It might be that, by the time you watch this video, Bitcoin has already started to recover a bit. Or that we might drift much further down toward the bottom. Some say it's going to drop to the bottomless pit. No, Bitcoin is not going to drop into the bottomless pit. I actually already recorded the video because it's all about the Trump stories, since Trump was the initial trigger. Because of his tariffs. As a result, Bitcoin sold off a bit. But now we're seeing a massive turnaround here. And Bitcoin is dropping down even more, much more massively. Let's take a look at what's really going on behind the scenes. And now comes the actual video about the trade war and how all of this is connected to the selling of Bitcoin. This was just an emergency update, but you don't need to panic here, because these are massive buying opportunities. That always needs to be mentioned. Hey, even if it sounds a bit panicky right now. And yes, I can be quite euphoric in my words sometimes. This is meant to wake you up, because you should be among the people who benefit from the crash, not among those who are the massive losers. This is really crazy. Donald Trump is imposing the next tariffs. This time it's hitting China. Here, an additional 10% tariffs are coming into effect. And what happens to the Bitcoin price? Of course, he's selling off first. Every time Bitcoin crashes here, it's as soon as Donald Trump mentions the word tariffs. This is really insane. Because we're looking at what's behind this and how things are going to unfold with the Bitcoin price. Because at the same time, other exciting things are happening that aren't actually so bad. Like, for example, the SEC's lawsuit against Coinbase is now being dropped, which is actually a good sign for crypto. Standard Chartered Bank reaffirms its Bitcoin target despite the current market turbulence. So, they're still bullish here. According to Standard Chartered, by the end of the cycle, when Donald Trump is no longer in power, it could be at $500,000. Robert Kiyosaki is bullish and says current crises are a big buying chance. And then we have Cynthia Lummis, who clarifies what yesterday's digital asset conference was all about and what's going on here. First, let's take a look at Donald Trump, who is making it clear that there are now additional 10% tariffs on China. And that is very special because it already existed. And the new tariffs come on top of that. The tariffs in the past, especially against the EU and Mexico against Canada, has always triggered a drop in the Bitcoin price because it just brings uncertainty into the market. So, tariffs also mean that inflation might rise, at least in the regions where the tariffs are implemented. Some people didn't get that either. They then wrote, why? Does this lead to inflation now? Yeah, it's pretty clear that when a tax is imposed on certain products and production costs go up, those higher production costs have to be passed on to the customers. That means prices in the supermarket are going to get more expensive, because companies just pass on the tariffs. I mean, you can't do that 100%, but to a certain extent, you can. And that leads to additional inflation, it leads to uncertainty, and it leads to economic turbulence. And that leads to a general sell-off in the market. And that also leads to them selling off more Bitcoin. Holger Sepik writes about this. The White House clarifies that the tariffs announced by Trump today, so 10% on China, are in addition to the 10% tariffs he announced at the beginning of the year. So, the new tariffs amount to a total of 20% on all Chinese goods. 10% tariffs on Chinese imports worth $400 to $500 billion. So, that's also the explanation here for the inflation. Check out what these numbers are. And that intensifies the trade tensions between the USA and China. China is responding with tariffs on US energy and agriculture, as well as with regulatory pressure on companies. Previous tariff cycles suggest that consumers and businesses will likely bear most of the costs of new trade barriers. At the same time, Donald Trump announced that he might lower income taxes and stuff like that. That means you just get the money from somewhere else. Not from your own country, but from other countries. And on top of that, you have to say that this here. Overall, it brings a lot of tension to the global markets. We also had a very interesting assessment from Robert Kiyosaki on this, which we'll check out in a bit. But first, let's take a quick look at Coinbase, because there was something there. Also, last week, I mentioned that the lawsuit might be dropped here. And now we actually have confirmation that the SEC is dropping the lawsuit against Coinbase. And that should actually be a good sign for the entire crypto market. So, not the best, of course, but it's a fancy setup, and mainly all the shitcoins will benefit from that. But it also has a little effect on Bitcoin, so when there's regulatory clarity, where exchanges can just, let's say, offer whatever they want, putting it a bit exaggerated, then it really opens the doors for new products to be created, new exchanges, new players entering the market, because there was just so much uncertainty. And Coinbase was really hit hard by the SEC because they said, yeah, you guys are doing things that aren't allowed. And we're just seeing that the SEC is dropping one lawsuit after another. There were so many lawsuits from both governments that are now all being dropped. And that's just a good sign if you want to start a new business here, if you want to take off in a U.S. with Bitcoin, with crypto. And from that perspective, I think Bitcoin will benefit in the long run, even though the lawsuit wasn't really about Bitcoin, but more about those shitcoin stories. And now we had a post from Robert Kiyosaki on X. And you can already see, it's going really viral. Almost 1 million impressions. For sure, Robert Kiyosaki is still ultra bullish here, no matter if tariffs come, no matter what happens, even if the market ends up in a bloodbath. Instead, Robert Kiyosaki sees this as a big opportunity, and that's also what you need to take away. Because Robert Kiyosaki is a billionaire, he's made a ton of money. And he knows exactly that these are the moments when you can make a lot of money. So, I've already seen so many comments saying, hey, now real money is being made. Now they're really filling up the bags, and eventually, you can profit from that. You don't make money at all-time highs. You make it when you jump in while the whole market is in a panic. And here Robert Kiyosaki writes, Bitcoin crash. Bitcoin is on sale. I'm buying. The problem isn't Bitcoin. The problem is our currency system and our criminal banks. So, he's going for it. 1. That the problem isn't with Bitcoin. And that's also what a lot of people are realizing right now. All this stuff here, the crashes and everything, it's just the general uncertainty. That doesn't mean that anything has changed with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still limited, capped at 21 million, and it's censorship resistant. That means all the properties are still there. Everything that's happening here is that we're basically shifting from a risk-on sentiment to a risk-off sentiment in the general system. That means every time there are problems here, in the financial market, in the economy, and that's what's happening with the tariffs, creating uncertainty. Then people first move into safe assets, so into risk-off assets. And for most people, Bitcoin still isn't seen as a risk-off asset. I mean, BlackRock has declared Bitcoin a risk-off asset. Katie Wood declares it a risk-off asset. Michael Saylor declares it a risk-off asset. Most people still don't see Bitcoin as a risk-off asset. But anyway, Robert Kiyosaki is still writing here. America is bankrupt. Our debts, including social programs like Medicare and Social Security, amount to over $36 trillion. And that's exactly what the Department of Government Efficiency always talks about. I read the tweet yesterday from Elon Musk, or I don't know if he tweeted it himself. I think it was shared by someone else. I think it might even be a quote from an interview or something of his, where he definitely put out a new statement again yesterday. The USA is going to go into a rapid bankruptcy if we don't bring down the deficit here. And that's exactly what Robert Kiyosaki is addressing here. The deficit absolutely has to come down, otherwise the USA has a huge problem. We have a national debt of $36 trillion. And if the deficit doesn't go down here, then US government bonds are going to become less and less attractive, because nobody wants to buy a government bond from a country that has like 400% debt in relation to its gross domestic product. Of course, you want to buy government bonds from countries that seem solvent here. And now he writes here our US Treasury bonds are a joke. If countries like Japan and China stop buying our bonds, inflation will skyrocket and the US dollar will collapse. These are some reasons. So why? He has a very grim forecast here, saying that a dollar crash could potentially be on the horizon. The economy is going to absolutely collapse, and those are just the reasons why you need to buy Bitcoin now. When Bitcoin crashes, I smile and buy more. And that's exactly the right mindset. When Bitcoin crashes, you have to smile, you have to strike, you have to buy. And if Bitcoin goes up, then as far as I'm concerned, then sell or go through the hotel where the best thing would be. My understanding is just to always HODL. But if you sell, definitely not when Bitcoin crashes, but when Bitcoin is going up. Because we've seen it again, so many papers, weak hands, panic sellers who just sold their Bitcoin into the falling knife. And now he says here, Bitcoin is money with integrity. Counterfeit money is a thief. And by counterfeit money, he means fiat money. I trade counterfeit money for gold, silver, and Bitcoin whenever they're on sale. And that's the best part. That means you just have toilet paper money like fiat money. And now just take a look when that happens here. When Bitcoin crashes, when silver crashes, when gold crashes, then you throw your paper money, your toilet paper bills, after it. And buy real money, not fake money. And that's just the very simple lesson from Robert Kiyosaki, which he doesn't say for the first time, but he keeps saying it over and over. Hey, if you want to get rich, then create some kind of productivity, add value to society, try to generate some cash flow, and then use that cash flow and exchange the cash flow when you get your paper money in toilet paper, then trade that toilet paper back into Bitcoin. For me, hard assets also include gold and silver, and that will make you a very, very wealthy person in the long run. But if you just create some value, and if you just have toilet paper, you've preserved your value, so you've preserved your purchasing power. Of course, you'll lose purchasing power, and sure, you could be the most valuable person in society. You can have a massive advantage. Here for humanity, you can produce massive cash flow, but if you're just hoarding toilet paper, then you're just to blame yourself. Because then you just haven't thought far enough ahead. So, the key to wealth for generations means generating cash flow, creating wealth for humanity, or even just being a regular employee, whether you have your own business or even if you're an employee. Everything is fine, but you need to have some kind of income. And the income should then be exchanged for Bitcoin, gold, or silver. I would generally always prefer Bitcoin here. Then we also had Senator Cynthia Lummis, who gave a little summary regarding the digital asset hearing yesterday, which I already looked at a bit critically. I said it was actually a total scam. Everyone was calculating that Bitcoin was coming. And now they're putting on this stablecoin shit show. Senator Cynthia Lummis definitely says the following. We learned this from yesterday's hearing. Most digital assets are not legally considered securities under the Howey test. So that means, in the end, shit show, let's fucking go. We can just throw any scam coins out there. The United States is lagging behind other countries in creating laws for digital assets. Other countries are already much further along. For example, countries like El Salvador, where there was some stress from the IMF again and so on. There will also be a podcast episode going online. Maybe it's already online by the time you watch this video. I'm not sure yet if it comes before the video or after the video. But there will definitely be another podcast episode added. Anyway, other countries are ahead in this regard. For example, maybe Lugano, as a little special economic zone, or maybe, Dubai, or I don't know. So, it really depends on what exactly you're looking at. But there are definitely other countries that are already doing better in that regard. In the legislation, Germany definitely isn't. Germany is worse off here than the USA. And then here is the third insight. Stablecoins will take our payment system into the 21st century. And I'm always very skeptical about stablecoins because I also don't understand why Cynthia Lummis is pushing stablecoins so much. I mean, I thought she was actually a Bitcoin supporter. And as a Bitcoiner, you should really understand that stablecoins are an absolute scam. And here, a gateway is created for a surveillance state. Because with stablecoins, you can do the same kind of things. As with a real CBDC, except it's not called a CBDC, it's called stablecoins. So, you definitely have to be very careful here. And now we have to look at the crazy statement from Standard Chartered Bank, because they are assuming a Bitcoin target of 500,000 US dollars, even though we're currently seeing a massive massacre, with the Bitcoin price down and all that. But it looks like there are now institutional players, big banks, that understand that despite the current panic, nothing has changed in the fundamentals. And the long-term outlook is still super bullish. Check it out.
What about the story last week about the hack? There is this story emerged that a hacker stole $1.5 billion worth of digital tokens in what researchers are calling the biggest crypto heist of all time. What impact has that had on the crypto market?
So it's come at a very bad time. So we already had the Solana meme coin story around Libera a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, risk assets coming lower, and then you had the BITART hack too. So within the crypto ecosystem, what we need are traditional financial players like Standard Chartered, like BlackRock and others that have the ETFs now to really step in size. And it's institutions like ours that now offer custody businesses that are much more secure than some of the hacks that you mentioned just now. So as the industry becomes more institutionalized, it should be safer. We should get a lot less of these negative headlines. Hopefully we'll get some regulatory clarity in the US too, and that can see, again, a lot more traditional players entering the market. Probably that will see volatility come lower, and again, that should add to that medium-term top side potential, which for me is Bitcoin up to 200,000 this year and $500,000 before Trump leaves office.
So let's be clear, the price targets this year are 200,000. And by the time Donald Trump is out of office, it's at $500,000. That clearly shows there was all this meme coin nonsense, with all these meme coins being released. Melania, Liberty Coin, or whatever it was called from Milei, then the Trump coin, and who knows what else. That brought a lot of uncertainty into the market. Then there was the BITART hack, which brought even more uncertainty into the market. But in the long run, it still looks good here. And that's also why this is huge right now. So here, the big players really seem to get it. And the salad hands are starting to panic. I saw it too. I asked you in the last video who really freaked out here. Some people said, yeah, I freaked out. But most people said, no. I'm not gonna freak out if the Bitcoin price drops a few $1,000s right now. We need to keep an eye on how this all plays out. If you want to take advantage of the cheap opportunities to buy Bitcoin right now, I'll put a link down below for you. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily and safely buy Bitcoin. With the code, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin here. I'm signing off here from El Sant in El Salvador. See you later. Peace out.